does RentSafe fit in? So RentSafe was launched probably 18 months early by the scrutiny panel, who said they wouldn't, but did, bless them. It's been sitting there chugging along gently. We had a reasonably hard launch in August where the Estate Agents Association came on board in large numbers, bringing landlords with them, and it's been rolling out since. We've probably got in excess of 1,000 properties on or waiting to go on. I would just point out that our RentSafe website is appalling. It is being redesigned by a third party that we keep kicking on a weekly basis to get it there. We've got lodging house on there, we've got winter lets on there, we've got people with one property on there, people with hundreds of properties on there, we've got businesses, individuals, people who have inherited them, we've got social housing providers on there, and despite what the Housing Minister said last time in the States, RentSafe is free, and as far as I'm concerned, it will always be free. It's voluntary, but what it does do is it says, I'm a good landlord, I'm accredited, my property's good, I'm accredited. If you meet the RentSafe standards, you will meet the minimum standards, hands down. Do we want you to join it? If you want to join it, we'd be happy to have you. We've got staff here that can make appointments to come out, talk it through. If you don't quite meet the standards, we can tell you what you need to do to get there. There's time, we've got time to work it through. If you've got a block and they're all identical, we probably only need to see one of them. I mean, that's a decision that will happen as we go through. It's been rubbished by many people, and I'm sure it will be again. But it's growing now. Since the new law came in, it's growing quite steadily. We're getting hundreds on every week. Interestingly, if we add up all the properties that the people have attended these sessions, so 2 so far and 2 more to go, we'll have about between 60 and 70% of all the rented dwellings on the island represented. We've also had good discussions with the farmers and their union to make sure that we can bring them in gradually. What we're really saying is, if we want people to come and work here in agriculture, in the finance sector, in hospitality, if we want our elderly people to live good, long, safe lives in their own homes, so we don't have to build, well, I was going to say a bigger hospital. I don't think we decided where we're building this one yet, but making sure it's big enough. And we want our kids to grow up safely without asthma causing black damp and things like that. We need a minimum standard, and that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about aesthetics, we're not talking about luxury, we're just making sure that people's homes aren't going to cause them illness and they're going to keep them safe. We're quite happy to work gently, work gradually with anybody to bring them up to those standards. So, RentSafe is free. A property meeting RentSafe standards meets the proposed minimum standards. If you want to discuss any aspect, there are members of the team here at the back. We can do it now, we can come out to see you, you can come in to see us, we can do it by email. So resources, you'll have heard it widely across the media that I'm getting 10 new staff. No. I've got massive resources. No, I haven't. We've known this has been coming for several years, so when we've lost a member of staff, when there's been churn, all we've done is made sure that the new members of staff are trained in housing issues, and we've altered the balance so we can deal with it. Because we deal with it in a gentle manner, we don't need to restaff. I mean, all sorts of people are telling me how we should run this scheme. Annual inspections, that's not going to happen. It doesn't happen in other things. What we want to do is just generally use the resources we've got, use them cleverly, use them wisely, and working with the good landlords to lift them away from any need of enforcement and regulation. We can concentrate our less than meagre resources, but adequate, I suspect, on the areas we need to do to bring back just a gentle incremental increase. We're 101 years behind the curve here. We're not going to dash to do it in 3 months or 6 months. We know where we need to target, we know what we need to do, and we're beginning gently to do that. And if there's any message that you go away from here is we want to work with you, not against you. We want to use all the powers that we have and you have to make sure that your tenants behave, that landlords have a great business, because without professional rented private sector, Jersey's up the Swanee. We need you guys. We want to help you do a good job, and we want to help those that are not quite doing quite such a good job to join you and do that good job. So we're not going to come out knocking on doors, barging in, anything else. The same laws apply to us as they apply to you about giving notice of inspection, unless we're invited in by your tenant. What we want to do is to work to make that better, and we're really delighted that so many people are taking their time to come out and see us. I'm happy to take any sorts of questions you like, either on the floor, if you want to embarrass me, because if I don't know the answer, or independently, or individually, now or later. We've got 2 more sessions this afternoon, well, one this afternoon, one for the evening. We will no doubt have to have a mop-up session, because people weren't here. We've actually asked by State's members, was it deliberate that it was on the State's sitting day, so they couldn't come? Actually, no, it wasn't. It was going to be tomorrow, but this was the only day in the near future we could get the town hall all day to have 4 sessions. We will have more sessions, and we'll have sessions on different things. We will put out training if we think landlords ought to have training or might benefit from training on some things. We're going to organise training for some of the agents, because they might be looking at different aspects. If there's anything you need us to help you with, please tell us, because we can do that, and we will do that. What we're about is gradually improving the state of the rented dwellings so the worst are at least good enough. Thank you. As big as we expected, to be fair. That's possibly a reflection of 2 things. One is ignorance, as you quite rightly point out, and the other is most people are probably happy where they are. There may be a third one, which makes people might think they're going to get evicted if they do complain. What we will do when the minimum standards order comes in, we will have publicity. We will encourage people to come to us, but they need to tell us what they're complaining about. The most common complaint is, I've got a problem with my housing, and we don't know who it's come from or anything. We then quite often have to go back and say, yes, but where do you live, and that sort of thing. We don't think we're going to get a big bubble, but that's a problem that we will go through. And there are also ways of prioritising. Some problems are a lot worse than others. You know, dangerous electrics, we'd probably be out there fairly quickly. A smell of gas, we'd probably have Jersey Gas out there fairly quickly, and we'd be under our desks. It's important that we prioritise as well. We've got a lot of experience in housing matters from both sides, from the letting side and from the environmental health side. So we will prioritise those. A lot of cases, people haven't even talked to the landlord. We will say, have you spoken to your landlord? Well, no, I thought you could do that. Well, the first thing is talk to your landlord, unless there's a really good reason why not. You know, I'm 9 months in arrears, he might not want to talk to me or whatever. We encourage people to work with their landlord first. But if necessary, we'll deal with it. But I think the first publicity is going to be when the minister signs that, because there will be a ministerial decision, and then we'll see that grow as we go on. This is about the time of year we start getting our peak anyway, because it rains. And people that had damp but forgot about it because it dried out are going to ring again. And often you'll go and say, well, how long has it been like this? Well, 3 years, but I haven't got around to do anything. It's clearly not a huge priority for them. So, yeah, I take your point. We need to handle that. And we'll handle it from our point of view. And we will work with landlords as well, because often, I won't say often, I would guess maybe 40% of the time that the complaint isn't found, if you like. It might be somebody doesn't want to leave, doesn't want the rent to go up, had a bit of a spat with the next door neighbour, using us as a weapon to beat the landlord with. We understand all that. We don't go in there thinking, nasty landlord, lovely tenant. We go in there thinking, what is the situation, and we'll work on it from there. As often as not with damp, we'll be talking to the tenant about how they live in it. You know, why do you put meat on the stove at 8 in the morning and it's still on at 8 at night and you haven't got a window open? Quite often you see that. Why is yours the only mouldy flat when everybody else is identical? It's either something very strange with the construction or it's the way you're living. Had you thought about putting on the ventilation fan and closing the door when you're showering? It's simplistic, but quite often that is the root cause of the problem. But yeah, I take your point that we will have certainly a peak of interest when this happens. I talked about nuanced legislation. What I will be able to do is say, you cannot let that place out to anybody over a certain age.
Yeah, but you're saying it's got to be a family of 5 persons. But anybody that sees sees the flat, says, my kid ain't going to fall down there, or my grandmother with her Zimmer frame ain't going to get up those stairs.
Yeah.
But I've written to the housing minister and I've tried to get some sort of reasonable sense here.
2 weeks ago, the housing minister said, you know what, Stewart, lodging houses, you can have them. So if you talk to, well, Rob here, do you hand it, Rob?
Yeah.
We'll see what we can sort out with you.
Many thanks, appreciate it.
And anybody else with problems like that, please get in touch. We're happy to work it through and find a solution that works for you, works for the tenants and works for us. It will apply if somebody has a house that they pay no rent for by virtue of their employment. So it covers staff accommodation, and we have got staff accommodation already in rent safe, and we've got appointments to go deal with some of the larger people that have staff accommodation and also winter lets. They said, can we go through them with them separately? And of course we will. And if you've got circumstances where you think you want us to come to you, if you talk to Michelle at the back, we can sort that out, because we'd far rather do it now, do it easily, and do it through working with you than become an issue later on. If we can spread the workload, that's a lot better for us. We're not sure how many there are, which is one of the issues. We believe, including social housing, there's around 15,000. Those are figures that we got from the last census. That's assuming people fill in the census properly. We know some did, some didn't. So no, but anything that is rented, so if it's staff accommodation, if you pay no rent but it's part of your job, if it's social housing, if it's parish housing, I suppose technically, I don't know if the Lieutenant's Governor's house would qualify or not, but it may well do. It may well we should be having them in rent safe.
He probably won't complain.
It might be quite a good coup, that. I'll have a word. But yeah, lodger in a house, so if you're lodging with a family, that's out with, if you're living as part of the family. But any other rented dwelling of any tenure will fall within these minimum standards. The definition of a rented dwelling is at the beginning of the law, and that was written in such a way as to try and avoid loopholes, because good landlords won't look for loopholes. People that are perhaps not as concerned about running a professional landlord's portfolio may well look for landlords, and generally those loopholes end up with somebody being damaged, which is not what we want. We're not trying to impose things that aren't sensible, aren't logical, aren't proportionate. In terms of disability, the minimum standards would deal with a normally abled average person. Where people are disabled, I mean, I have views about whether we should be building more places that are suitable for disabled, and more places with ground floor lavatories, so that people that struggle to get up the stairs can make use of the facilities without causing problems. And we know that people not being able to get up to the bathroom causes all sorts of problems and adds on to health issues, but that would come into here. We're talking about the normal person. So if they needed adaptations and things, that's for the occupational therapy department in health to deal with specific problems with specific people.
If a guy becomes disabled as a tenant, the landlord may not want him to carry out adaptations. Is there anything your department can do about that? In other words,
well, we certainly can't force a landlord to carry out those adaptations. No. That's a discussion between the occupational therapy department, who generally would contribute towards those, but I appreciate that people might not want their flat changing. That's a conversation between landlord, tenant and medical advisor. In house, you have to give somebody a reasonable notice of entry. You cannot have people wandering into places where people will be in a state of undress, or they may be vulnerable children or vulnerable people in there. I think that is a human right. People have a right to their private life, and that's ensconced in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which trumps a lot of the laws. But in my experience, my view is that people have a right to privacy, and unless it's an emergency, you should give sensible notice before you go into somebody's property.
It's a bit contrary to the old Tomes judgment on that. I mean, that was it. Has that been reviewed, do you know? The Crown Officers reviewed the old Tomes judgment. If you have privacy, it's a tenancy.
I'm not aware of that being reviewed or not. I mean, that will be one for the Housing Minister. But at the moment, we would say that you have to give, I think tenancy protection law says you've got to give a reasonable amount of time, and that's usually around 24 hours, unless it's an emergency, clearly. If you smell gas, and you've got gas in the property, it's a good idea to sort something out. But just as I wouldn't want somebody barging into where I live, I don't think anybody else should have the right to go in there. Now, that's not saying you can't, but there might be one or two minor things that need to be done to protect those people. And we fully appreciate that, I mean, from our point of view as well, often it's better having somewhere occupied than non-occupied, in the case of vandalism, social behaviour. But I prefer you came to talk to us first rather than us getting a phone call saying, have you seen where they've put me? I know with several years ago with Andy, where we had premises that they acknowledged were not at the best standard, the rents were reduced, but they still weren't the best. Happily, they've been demolished. Well done.